Welcome back to On the Rise, as we have witnessed one of the most controversial transfers in Canadian football history, as Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty has crossed the Canadian Classic divide, as he has left his hometown club, his homegrown side, and his academy player in TFC, leaving Toronto FC and heading across that Canadian Classic divide, going to Quebec to join CF Montreal in a brilliant piece of business by CF Montreal, truly showing how good they are in the market and identifying Canadian talent to bring into the squad and just talent in general, as CF Montreal has made a brilliant piece of business here by sending up to $1.3 million in general allocation money, sending that in installments, which will be $850,000 guaranteed, $450,000 in 2024 and $400,000 in 2025, and could see an additional $450,000 in general allocation money as well. And this is all for, might I remind you, the 20-year-old Canadian fullback, wingback, and winger in Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty. He might feel older by now because a couple of years ago he was on trials with some of the biggest clubs in world football, Liverpool, Arsenal, and the list goes on. Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty is still only 20 years of age. He's been looked at as one of the best, exciting, most upcoming talents in Canadian football for many years now, and he still is. And it's a very exciting thing to see him go to CF Montreal, and a huge positive for Canadian soccer in general, because I think we're going to see a huge skyrocket in his play, in his overall ability, in his confidence, and in his style of play, and also on the club he's going to go to after CF Montreal, because this is a very exciting move. It has so much positives for CF Montreal and Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty, and a big negative and a slap in the face for Toronto FC, and truly shows their lack of youth identification, a youth pathway into the first team, and playtime, because they've messed this up so many times. It's not the first time they've done this with an academy player and a very exciting Canadian. Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty isn't the first one. Not even close. This has happened so many times on occasion with Canadian players, young Canadian talent, and exciting Canadian talent as well, which we will talk about later in the video, but I'm not going to dwell on the negative right now. I really want to talk about CF Montreal, because there's so many positives around this move for Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty and CF Montreal. Some transfers you get winners and losers, some transfers, both teams, all parties are winners. This one, it is a huge home run for CF Montreal and Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty. Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty would get a great performance, a decent performance at Toronto FC, and never get a consistent run of games with TFC. And that was very unfortunate under John Herdman. But Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty going to CF Montreal wanted to be guaranteed consistent playing time, where he'd have a run in the first team, where he knew he'd be able to be a regular in the side. And that was guaranteed to him from CF Montreal. And that has been broken today, and that's extremely exciting news to see a 20-year-old Canadian with so much potential that all Canadian supporters want to see playing his best football. And the fact he's going to be given that kind of level, that consistency, that ability to play week in and week out, and to be able to challenge in the first team is extremely important at the age of 20 with how much potential he does have. And CF Montreal always get that right. Whether it's with Canadian talent, whether it's with foreign talent, they always get it right. And they always get it right with youth players, especially Canadian players. They've done it so well. And Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty has a clear pathway into the CF Montreal side, playing that 3-5-2 system, playing that 3-4-1-2 system, or however you want to look at that three in the back setup. Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty will either be deployed as a right wing back or as a right midfielder. And I think it suits him very well. Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty is obviously a fullback, a wing back, however you want to call it, but he is more predominantly your attacking fullback, your attacking wing back. He's an attacking minded player. So why put him at straight fullback in a 4-in-the-back system? Put him as a right midfielder, a wing back, to get the best out of him. And I think playing that 3-back system, consistently playing him, you will see the best out of Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty. His pace, his skill, his ability on the ball, his dribbling ability, his ability to play those quick link-up passes. It'll be extremely exciting in a 3-in-the-back where he's not solely having to think about when do I need to track my runner, I need to be falling back to cover my space. The half space behind him, that'll be totally covered by whether it's Sammy Piette, whether it's Mathieu Choinière filling in, covering those gaps, just like per se Jordan Henderson did with Liverpool for so many years with Trent Alexander-Arnold. This is going to be the same thing with Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty, and I think it's going to be implemented so well at CF Montreal that I think it's going to go very, very well for him. And I think this is a player who could sign a new deal at CF Montreal, but ultimately having a very good half season, having a very good year with CF Montreal, could see him even move to Europe next year. Could even see a winter transfer for Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty. That's not even close to out of the realms of possibility for this Canadian talent. He's extremely exciting, valued at 1.5 million euros on transfer market. This is still as a 20-year-old Canadian. And as Matthew Shinetti even posted today, he's talked about how all Canadians on the Copa America roster, but all Canadians in general now, aren't just gems in the market. Their prices have absolutely skyrocketed, and they're not just cheap fees. Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty will become one of them. You look at what CF Montreal are able to do with Canadian talent, whether it's Alistair Johnston heading off to Celtic, whether it's Ismail Kone heading off to Watford and then going to Marseille, whether it's Kamal Miller doing wonderful things in the MLS where he went on to Inter Miami, then to Portland. They have such a great track record with Canadians, and especially bringing through young Canadians and talented Canadian footballers and giving them that pathway into the first team and consistent football. Their tactics, their system, their development plan, it is immense and it's extremely exciting. And Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty, he's not only going to have Canadians he can look up to at this squad, but also Canadians who are his age, who he can blend with, who he can get along with, and talented players. Like Jules Anthony Vincent, like Jonathan Sirois, like Nathan Saliba. There's some exciting Canadian players at his age level as well. But also some older Canadians, like Joel Waterman, Mathieu Choinière, Sammy Piette. He can learn off Canadian internationals as well as play with players his age, being able to blend in very well. This is going to do that whole squad so much wonders, and having a happy, excited, confident Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty, I think this is going to be very exciting for CF Montreal, and being able to get a prospect and a talent like him is extremely exciting, guys. And I think in a year or so we're going to see him head off to Europe. And we got to look at this Toronto FC side of things for this transfer. Before we wrap up this video, before we do, guys, drop down below and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments on what you think about Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty crossing the Canadian Classic divide and joining CF Montreal. And also hit that like button and drop a sub, because their support has been incredible, and I hope you guys are enjoying the content because there's so much to give. But this is extremely negative for Toronto FC. Whichever way you want to look at it, this is an extremely negative move for Toronto FC. This is a side who is incredible at identifying young, youthful, talented, top Canadian players. You just look at the list. Jacob Schaffelberg, Jaden Nelson, Jason Russell-Rowe, Lucas McNaughton, Liam Fraser, Mark-Anthony Kaye. Maybe all of them aren't world beaters, but these are Canadian players who some of them are playing at the top level of the MLS, some players are playing in Europe, some players are being linked with top clubs in Europe, some players are still decent top MLS footballers as well, and Mark-Anthony Kaye and Liam Fraser who are able to get the job done. And these are just Canadians that Toronto FC have sold for cheap fees, who have not gotten anything out of them, who haven't been able to integrate them well into starting lineups, who haven't had that clear route into the first team for them. Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty isn't the first player to have this problem. Jacob Schaffelberg did. Jaden Nelson did. There's no clear route into the first team for them. And that's what there has to be in the MLS. MLS is a feeder league, and that is clear. And Toronto FC, the sooner they fully realize that, the better for them. And they just haven't had that consistency. Yes, they might give players a chance in the squad as a role player, but if you're giving a young player a game, and they play very well, you can't go in and sit them on the bench for 2, 3, 4 games and expect them to walk back into the team and be immense. That's what they did to Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty for some extent. And you just can't be expected to play your best football when at such a young age, whether you're 20 years or younger, when you're expected to come in for one game, play hot, and then go thrown in for 15, 20 minutes, or come in as a substitute, however it may be. You can't be expected to play your football all the time at the highest level if you're not playing consistently and you're not getting started and backed. That's what CF Montreal have done so brilliantly. There's that clear pathway, there's that clear philosophy at the club. You have to play Canadians, you have to bring through Canadians, whether it's Rita Zuhader going out on loan, whether it's players like Jules Anthony Vilson, whether it's players like Joel Waterman, Matthew Chouanier, Samuel Piette, Ishmael Kone, Alistair Johnson, the list goes on. And at Toronto FC, does the list go on? It's Jonathan Osorio and it's Richie Laryea. And then I really struggle. I'm not a Toronto FC fan, so I'm not going to pretend like I know so many more, but there's so many players that you can just list and name, and their names just come off the tongue. That players that they've given up and lost for such a good fee that they haven't got the best out of, that there hasn't been that route for, which is a clear problem, and there has to be something addressed there, whether it's upper management, whether it's a sporting director problem, whether it's the philosophy at the club, whether it's the manager, because Canadians were excited to see John Herdman go to the club. They were excited to see him bring through Kobe Franklin, bring through Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty, and that truly didn't happen with Marshall-Rutty, and that is a true problem. I'm not sure if it's philosophy around the hierarchy, whether it's the manager, whether it's the pathway, but something has to change at Toronto FC around their youth development. But CF Montreal has gotten an absolute steal, up to $1.3 million in general allocation money for Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty, and a very exciting move for CF Montreal. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. Drop a like, hit that sub button, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Peace.